Yeah, I feel like this is a subject we should be talking about around Valentine's Day or something because love is in the air all the time, including at independent living, assisted living, even memory care. I'm sure it happens all the time. When our parents get old, if there's only one of them still around, there's still love out there.
Right.
And it's hard to say no.
And it's hard to have those discussions sometimes. So we decided to bring in Todd Whatley and Sara Scott. They have a podcast called Answers on Aging. Thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having us. We're excited.
Well, and of course, it also, you have your podcast, but it also, one of the reasons why we thought it'd be great to talk to you about this discussion is the fact that, Todd, you are an elder law attorney, and Sara, you're a social worker by training and have worked in nursing homes and have potentially some experience in these areas of seeing this. So we thought it'd be great to talk about this. And I think that, it's funny that these are the conversations we might have with our teenagers, and yet it's a little odd when we might be having to have these with our parents.
Yeah. And it's a very different world out there now than it was back when they were teenagers. So
yeah, it is. It's definitely relative though. If we have aging parents who are either still living in the home or living in a long-term care facility setting, that they still need that companionship. And as long as they have the ability to consent, is definitely one of the most important things. It's going to be just a natural desire for no matter what age you are to have that partner and that companion. And so the elderly population or our seniors, there's no exception to that. And I think one thing that we see a lot or seem to be seeing a lot more of is later in life marriages. And those are incredibly sticky at times, Todd.
Yes, absolutely. There's a whole lot of things you need to be aware of and concerned about. And it tends to be the kids who are more concerned than the older people typically.
Yeah. It's been really interesting. And we actually have an episode on the podcast about things to consider before entering into a later in life marriage. But, for some states who have the common law marriage that's accepted practice, you need to consider those things too when you're entering into those later in life dating or marriage situations, for sure.
So in many cases, is doing some sort of a prenup a good step?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would definitely recommend that, but I would also recommend so many times the financial situations of each person can really surprise you, particularly when healthcare issues come into play, and particularly needing long-term care, which can be very expensive.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, sorry. I was also going to mention that not only considering if a prenup is a good idea or not, but also looking at, does your mom receive, death benefits after your dad passed away that she stands to lose if she follows her heart and gets married? And what does that look like? And
that's really tough.
You've got to really think about all the stuff, even though you don't necessarily want to have that conversation. And Todd talks about, the benefits of a widow of a veteran and how she couldn't survive without that income. And one thing that we talk about is, if it legally is going to financially devastate you to get married, there are some interesting things that you could do in lieu of that.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Because I think these are the...
I think the biggest thing for a child, and luckily my mom and dad, after 62 years, they're still married, so we haven't had to worry about that. But I feel like we almost feel like the bad guy even thinking about it, like, oh my gosh, is he or she trying to scam our parent just by getting married? So is it bad to feel that way, or is it okay to try and do some research about the person or about the situation just to make sure that
protect them?
Nothing bad happens?
it does seem kind of weird. Number one, talk about finances, but number two, you really have to bring the kids in. I know this is not involving the kids, but it truly is involving the kids, because there's going to be some issues. This is a lifetime of savings that you probably wanted to leave to your kids. But once you get married, it really mixes that up with his kids, her kids, or both spouses' kids. That is a concern. But the thing that I see when I meet with couples before they get married is you're going to lose some benefits. You're, by marrying this person, if she was married to a veteran, typically, there could be some very serious money out there she's entitled to. She will lose that once she remarries.
Another thing or another approach to this topic that I find interesting is, how traditional and pretty religious those generations seem to be. And, while they want to spend forever with their newfound love, and then they find out that it's going to be financially devastating for them to do that. Getting married just in the church is sometimes a solution that will, follow their church's rules and be acceptable under God's eyes, but just not carry through with the actual filing of the marriage license and doing it on the legal side of things. Seems to work well for some.
But if you're in a common law marriage state, that is not going to apply.
Right.
And I know Texas is one of those states.
I was going to say, how do we find out who's common law marriage state and who isn't?
Just do a Google search.
Is that
probably Google it, but please let me say, I highly encourage you that if your aging parent is thinking of getting married and they have funds, it is well worth your time and effort and the money to do an appointment with an elder law attorney who understands Medicaid, VA, estate planning, who can advise you through this. It is well worth the money that you pay for that.
I mean, I think in that situation, what I'm hearing is that it's just so important to know what you're getting into as far as, or what you're gaining and or potentially losing by doing this before you take that step. And I know that it is hard when emotions are involved, for sure, but
yes,
very much so.
I always say when emotions run high, intelligence often runs low.
Right.
You don't tend to make really great decisions at that point. And so being as prepared as possible and asking those difficult questions to your parents. I mean, it really does tie into, with the name of your group, Parenting Aging Parents. You talked about in the beginning of the interview, you kind of ask questions like you would your teenager when they start dating. Absolutely. You're still looking out for the safety of your parents. And you do want to ask similar questions like you would about a teenage child starting to date someone, because you have their best interest in mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Those roles flip, and it's just pretty, it's a very awkward conversation, shall we say.
Any suggestions on how to make it less awkward, or do you just have to go in and say, okay, maybe approach it from, I know this is an awkward conversation, Mom or Dad, but I think it's something we need to talk about?
Just blame it on the attorney. That's why make the attorney visit. Just say, Mom, let's talk about your estate plan, but then let the attorney know, hey, we're here pre-marriage. Let's discuss this. And I mean, we're used to it. It doesn't bother us. Y'all will leave the office. We're going to move on to our next client. So, we can bring this up, open up everything and just lay it out there.
Todd, you talked about talking to someone like you, an elder law attorney. Is there any reason to get an accountant involved? Any reason to get a social worker involved? Any reason to get, is there any reason to get your pastor, your priest, or someone like that involved? How many people should you get involved in this? Because you're talking about more than just the prenup, and more than just the financial part, and more than just the social part of it and the religious part of it. So, Dean, if you can't afford it, should you get all of those people involved, and should it be individual conversations?
If you can get everybody at the same table, that would be fantastic. I don't think I've ever had that happen, to get that many professionals free on the same hour. And the problem is many times the elder law attorney's version of things will be different than the accountants, and that will be different than the financial advisor.
Okay, interesting.
They're all thinking different topics. Like I'm thinking long-term care, losing your money to the nursing home, the accountants thinking taxes, and the financial advisors thinking
Gotcha.
preserve, pretty much everything we can. And so we're all thinking differently. It is fantastic if you can sit at the same table, but yes, please get those people involved to come up with a game plan.
Now, I think, go ahead.
Well, I did just want to say one really cool thing that I would recommend if your loved one is in a nursing home or an assisted living facility and starting a new relationship or considering getting married later in life, request a care plan meeting with the facility, because that is probably going to be the one-stop shop to consider for if their care is already being paid for through Medicaid, what it would look like to their eligibility status. But then it'll also address the social aspect of it and the religious aspect of it through the social services department and then the activities department. And that's when everybody, is on the interdisciplinary team. And they basically have a powwow about mom or dad's care. And so I think that would be the best case scenario for you to do, and just make sure everybody's on the same page. And would also be a good point to maybe set up some boundaries. When I was in the nursing home, we had a few married couples who were still sexually active and wanted, rightfully so, their privacy respected and time to be able to engage and not have somebody knocking on the door trying to deliver medication or things like that. So we had a system in place so that they would hang something out on the door that we knew we're not going in there. We're not.
I do not.
I mean,
role reversal.
Do not disturb sign. Gotcha.
Yeah. So you definitely need to think outside the box sometimes, but that has worked in the past in my experience.
Now, I don't know if you can answer this, or don't if you can't, but like, was there any sort of really odd or crazy situation that you saw during your time that you can share?
Absolutely.
Again, some of us don't necessarily, you just don't think of your parents in that way, of course. Sure. And you might not even think, because you don't think of your parents in that way, you might not be thinking of, I guess these are things I should talk to them about.
Yeah. So we had a female resident who was a widow, and there was a gentleman who was a widower that had moved into the facility a few months after she did. And they just really hit it off and wanted to move into a room together. And they, were a couple essentially, and both, in their right minds, and just had more physical disabilities. And so when it came time to talk to the family about this, they straight up didn't want to involve the family because it's their decision. They can make their own decisions, but you also have to communicate certain things. So it was a really fine line. And finally, we just ended up having to bring all the families together with the residents and say, they're comfortable telling you that they want to be together in the same room, and we're not asking your permission. We're simply informing you. And if they want you to know more information about this, they are going to tell you. Like, don't start hounding the staff with questions. And
gotcha.
It was, I think, more of an adjustment for the staff, to be honest with you, who were familiar with the residents and knew that they weren't married, and they would just always ask questions. Is that okay? And it's like, yes, trust me, we have all of our bases covered. Everything's documented and legal. We're fine. But it's kind of like
worker, like coworkers who have relationships. Sometimes you have to sign paperwork. So a lot of what we've discussed today has been about aging parents who are making decisions, who are able to make good decisions, hopefully able to make good decisions. What about those situations? We've had one person in our group talk about that her dad started doing online dating, and very soon found that there was a woman that he had communicated with and said, hey, How about if I start taking over your life insurance premiums and you just make me the beneficiary? And that, thankfully, he had told his daughter. But I mean, like, how do you handle those kinds of situations? That could go bad really fast.
So the answer there is powers of attorney. It is absolutely the most important document that anyone can do, but particularly someone who is older and particularly someone who is starting to slip mentally or is being taken advantage of. With a very comprehensive elder law power of attorney, this daughter could go back to the insurance company, or I said daughter, but the agent could go to the insurance company and change all of that back and say, nope, we're not doing this. This is going somewhere else. But then with a power of attorney, you are able to monitor their bank accounts. You can see any checks that are written, any withdrawals. It's just absolutely crucial that once you start getting older, if you've not done a power of attorney, do one. Make sure that someone that you know and trust is able to check in on what you're doing and be able to do things for you. And the biggest pushback I get from people is, well, I don't want to give up my rights if I do a power of attorney. You don't. You get to still do things. My wife is my power of attorney. I still practice law. I still write checks. I still do things. She's just there just in case. Sarah's done the same thing. So doing a power of attorney just allows someone to help you. You don't lose anything, but it's just a very good safeguard.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got another great example to share as well
About
the couple, the woman in the.
Oh yeah, there's someone else in our group who the mom is in has a little bit of dementia. She's in assisted living, and a man has kind of moved in with her. And they say they can't do anything about it.
The facility
says, facility says they can't do anything about it. So the kids are like, we don't know what to do. We try to get mom to leave, and she doesn't want to leave, and their hands are tied.
And dementia certainly adds a whole other level.
Yeah. So it's just, again, it's one of those things like, ooh, what do I do?
Well, dementia definitely adds a whole nother level that you need to consider. But the diagnosis alone does not mean that someone is incapacitated or can no longer make decisions.
Sure.
Many people, many of our clients have some form of dementia, are still pretty high functioning and will be for the next couple of years. And we certainly want to, respect their independence and help them, live as independently for as long as possible. And to a certain extent, unless that guy that moved in with mom is making her unsafe, or they can prove that it's a negative thing, there's not a whole lot that they can do if mom still has the ability to make decisions. And capacity is a huge soapbox of this guy. And there is a difference between medical capacity and legal capacity, and not many people realize that. So again, one of the main reasons why having an elder law attorney, a senior care navigator, the community resources that are close to you or on Facebook or wherever you can get them, you've got to reach out to those professional services and really get the best information, and also help kind of ease your mind a little bit that, okay, right now, there is nothing we can do. But once mom gets a little bit worse, maybe we can step in.
Well, especially, I guess, if you feel like potentially that person is taking advantage of them a little bit.
For sure.
Yes.
Well, for sure.
Like from a financial perspective.
Yes. Yes. And really, when things like that are going on, it's not difficult to prove. I mean, it takes some work. And I would definitely recommend to the family, getting ducks in a row as soon as they start to really suspect something. Take pictures, keep a journal, go ahead and call the police and make a report. It doesn't mean that it's legit or that it's actually happening, but at least there's a record that will back up your story, unfortunately, if you have to use it in the future.
Yeah.
And then I guess also partnering, or at least making the community aware of your concerns as well. And I know you said that there's a very fine line between what they can actually do or talk to you about, but just making sure, I guess, that they're just another set of eyes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. And their eyes are going to see things differently than yours do.
Sure.
They're going to hopefully be a little more objective
Mhm.
and less emotionally driven. So definitely having another set of eyes from a professional is the way to go.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Get some help and be prepared, because
Yes.
you never know what's coming. But
That's
be
right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yep.
Getting old is not for sissies.
Well said. Todd and Sarah, thank you so much. It's great talking.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we learned a lot there for just being
Yes.
prepared. Not that we want anything like that to happen, because again, we want the love to be there if
Right.
if, you know,
If
if need
it's-
be. But
If
it
it's
just happens in this world that you've got to be prepared for the worst.
right, and
just in case.
it's hard to have to think about the fact that there might be people out there that are potentially trying to take advantage of our parents, and we want to protect them, and yet they also, it could be love.
Yeah.
You know, it could be real.
You
So you
never
want
know.
to make them as happy as
Yeah.
possible.
Hey, remember, we love to hear from you. If you have any topic you'd like for us to discuss here on Parenting Aging Parents, just let us know.